Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is Empowering Astrology. And this week we're looking at the astrology not only of an upcoming solar eclipse, but also Mars's arrival in Leo. So this week it is June 7th through 13th, 2021. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. If you're watching live, do let me know where you're watching from. I'm just a nerd for different places in the world. And it's also pretty cool that we all kind of get here together every week. And I know some of you watch the replay, of course. And we are international, the way that my Sagittarius rising likes it. Kind of speaking of which, it's eclipse season. And 2 weeks ago, we had a Sagittarius full moon. And this week, we'll have a Gemini new moon. These sort of two, eclipses that form this bookend for this time that splits 2021 into these two halves. If you are a Sagittarius or a Gemini or a Pisces or a Virgo, you're very likely feeling this on some larger level. It could mean a move. It could mean something going on in a relationship. It could mean that there is something going on in your professional life as well, or maybe it's just a time of powerful new beginnings. So if you are one of those four signs, let me know how you're doing. We have a lot to cover this week, but I also, when I think about, what am I going to talk about this week? And sometimes these little ideas will pop up in my head throughout the week because I'm always, chewing on astrology. And it's kind of how my mind works. So I think it's always a good opportunity to remind people what astrology is. And this is stuff that I come, into contact with when I talk to my clients. But astrology, it's just energy. And you've heard me say that before, but I think that this is important when we go into these times that are quote unquote stressful, or there's going to be a quote unquote change. What does that mean for me? And this is why I try to reframe it and just remind you that you are the 50%, the astrology is the other 50%. So when we go into, say, this new moon on Thursday, June 10th, it's a new structure of time. It says the energy is going to be shaped a certain way. These are the possibilities. These are the archetypes, because astrology is an archetypical language, a symbolic language, and it's a symbolic understanding of time and how we live time. So just because we have this Gemini solar eclipse doesn't mean that everybody's going to live it differently. Of course, each and every one of you have your own sign. Maybe you are a Gemini, but the rest of us will live it in our own way, and then we will color our experiences with our own essence, our own self, because there is the astrology, but then we color it. It's, if you think of astrology like a vessel, we live in the vessel. So this is why I try to periodically just remind you all just to start thinking about this a little bit differently than maybe we are culturally conditioned to do so. Astrology is not a fate. Your future is not written. So when people come to me and said, what's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's see what the options are. Astrology just says it is time for this. It is time for that. But here we are at an eclipse, and it just means that it is a little bit more to it is time for this or time for that, because the eclipse is just a hand on the clock saying that it's a new hour. So sort of think of it that way, and not to use the same metaphors over and over again, but I say it last week, I probably said it last week, I'll say it this week. Eclipse season is like the curtain coming down on one act and the curtain coming up on another act. And when that curtain comes up, so to speak, on Thursday, June 10th, there might be new people in your life, there might be new situations, there might be a new plot line. And maybe you're already feeling it already. And that's the thing about eclipses, is that they remind us that time is not always so linear. And sometimes you're waiting for what's going to happen with these eclipses, and it's already happened. It happened in April. It happened in May. So it's just, wanted to give you all kind kind of this reframe, periodically. I know that some of you watch every week, but it's my job just to kind of give you all a new perspective. Yeah, astrology is just something that we inhabit. It's not us, it's not our fate, but we can either live it 5% or 10%. We can either put bitterness and hardness into the structure, or we can put something else. So I'm just kind of inviting you all to put something very new and very different of yourself into the upcoming solar eclipse. And we'll talk a little bit in a few moments about what our options are. And options is a really good word for this Gemini solar eclipse, because Gemini is the sign of options. If you know a Gemini, they like options, they like choices, they like all the things. I'm not a Gemini, but I have a Gemini moon, so it's an energy that I'm really familiar with. But if you're watching live, if you're watching the replay on IGTV, on YouTube, or even listening on Spotify, how are you feeling these eclipses? Have you seen any dramatic shifts or turns? We are going to also be talking about, like I said, Mars going into Leo later this week. And when it does, it's also going to activate another thing that's going on in the sky. Yes, another thing. So June's kind of an interesting month. I actually posted my June horoscopes this past weekend. I know they're late. Life. You know what? Like I said, I'm a Gemini moon. I'm Sag rising. Got Saturn and Virgo. I got my nodes in Virgo Pisces. There's a lot going on in my life. So yeah, I actually got a puppy. So if puppy noises happen, what can you do? What can you do? So let's look at the astrology this week of June 7th through 13th, 2021. So the main event is this Gemini solar eclipse on June 10th. There's really nothing of note before that. We've got what's called a balsamic moon. That's the technical term when the moon is waning and getting into those last few days before the solar eclipse, or before our new moon, actually, because a solar eclipse is a new moon. Little quick science lesson. If you have a new moon in, I forget the amount of degrees within the lunar nodes, you have a solar eclipse. And right now we have the lunar nodes in Gemini and Sagittarius. So this means that because it's Gemini season and we had a full moon in Sagittarius, lunar eclipse, that this new moon on Thursday, June 10th, will be a solar eclipse. It will be an annual solar eclipse. I mean, I don't think that really makes much of a difference personally with the astrology. I know some people feel a little bit differently, but what can we expect from this eclipse? So we know that this is a new moon. New moons are new beginnings. They open up a 4-week chapter. That is the duration of a lunar month. We have about 13 lunar months in a year, so it's a pretty common event. But every 6 months, that new moon or that full moon aligns with the lunar nodes, and then we have a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. The solar eclipse opens up a new 6-month chapter. Think of it like this. You got this timeline of all these new and full moons, and they're sort of nested energetically in a way in this container, this energetic container of the new moon, of the solar eclipse. So we can go back to, say, December of 2021 when we had that last solar eclipse. It was December 14th. It was at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. I remember it well because my ascendant is at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. But that solar eclipse opened up a sort of vessel, so to speak, of time. I mean, yeah, astrology is like engineering and architecture, except it's subtle engineering, subtle architecture. Maybe this is why I love astrology so much, and I got like all this background in IT, because it's not code. Well, it is code. It's a different type of code. It's a code that's at least 5,000 years old. So we had this sort of structure of time that opened up in December, and it was through the lens of Sagittarius, and it said that, okay, over the 6 months, we are going to look at life through the lens of faith, truth, meaning. What do I believe? What are my convictions? What am I standing up for? Sagittarius is also the sign of foreign travel, exploration, religion, philosophy. It's a sign that points us outward. So we've all been maybe having a little bit of an existential crisis for the last 6 months, give or take. That new moon also, that solar eclipse in December, also made aspects to Neptune. It sort of cranked up the existential, spiritual crisis that maybe some of you felt, the emotional crisis that you felt over the last 6 months. Like, what does this all mean? Like, what am I doing? It's a crazy year, 2020, OMG. So that took us, those energies took us into this week. And we're closing that story out right now. And maybe you're like, I don't know what I believe in, Katie. And I'm like, I don't know either. So maybe if you go back to the start of this eclipse cycle, we had the Sagittarius full moon on June 5th of 2021. And that was the first in this series. And this will take us all the way into the spring of, I say spring, sorry, Southern Hemisphere. I always try to not say spring or summer because I know it's the reverse for you all. But yes, it will take us into March or April of 2022. But this is a big meditation on what do we all believe in. Maybe we're all having deep conversations, maybe we're searching our soul, maybe we're revising or reevaluating our truth, our capital T truth. Maybe we're realizing our capital T truth is not truth. And I think that's something that we all had to remember with 2 weeks ago, May 26th, we had that full moon lunar eclipse. So the Gemini Sag polarity in astrology, these two signs, every sign has a polarity. It's all about the search for information. Gemini, getting ideas and information, and then the other side is, well, what do we make of it? The words have to form a book. They have to form an ideology. They have to form a religion. So there was this process in the mutable signs of gathering information, Gemini, using Virgo to decipher and discern and to edit, and then to get to Sagittarius, and it's like, this is my truth. This is what I believe in. And then you get to Pisces, and then it's sort of disseminated and transmitted through Pisces. But yeah, we're all sort of thinking about these bigger ideals right now, and sort of the caution I think that I made last week, or maybe even the week before that, I said, okay, well, if the South Node right now is in Gemini, the South Node is in Sagittarius right now, just question what you believe in, because there's a lot of strong energies with these eclipses, and we have to sort of re-examine our convictions and sometimes say, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. And I think that that's a good sort of device to work with these eclipse energies, because if the South Node is in Sagittarius and we have to examine that where maybe we are wrong, then the Gemini solar eclipse this week is the search for new information and perspectives and ideas. So, like I said, we came out of December, came all the way to this week. Now here's the other side of things. So we have to find new perspectives and new ideas and information. Gemini is the sign of communication. It's writing, it's speaking. It's the sign of journalists and writers. It's public speakers. It's the need to share and to, there's that curiosity with Gemini. And sometimes Sag has this, every sign has a shadow, by the way. And the Sag's shadow is, it loses the curiosity. It gets really rigid in its thinking. So here we are over the next 6 months. This will take us from June of 2021 all the way to December of 2021. We have to really re-examine everything. We have to get curious. We have to take new classes. The idea is that if Sagittarius is higher education, it's like the professor has to now go back to school and sit with the students and start all over in a way. I mean, that's just kind of to give you just a little different perspective. So what day is it? It's Monday. Thursday, June 10th, the solar eclipse is going to open up this new chapter. We have the collective experience. So you might be thinking, but I'm not a Gemini. What does this mean for me? Well, you have Gemini somewhere in your chart. It your chart consists of all the zodiac signs. So you are all the zodiac signs. Your sun just happens to be in one of them. But over the next 6 months, like, that part of your life is going to be highlighted. And I will go through quickly through each of the 12 signs. But collectively, we all need new perspectives. So that's just something to put in the back of your mind over the coming days, weeks, months, as we get into the end of 2021. A couple of things about the solar eclipse to keep in mind. Number one, Mercury is retrograde. So what's a retrograde? A retrograde is not bad. So definitely take that out of your vocabulary, please, and thank you. A retrograde is just a change in a state of energy. Remember, astrology is just energies, the energy of time. So if something direct is active, then a retrograde is receptive, just like a battery with a plus and a minus on either side of the battery. So a retrograde says we have to switch, we have to change the energy. We have to reflect, we have to look at it from a different perspective. That said, there is, some traditional cautions with Mercury retrograde. We can't think, that just because we have this information that it's right. Mercury is also square Neptune. So there's the sense of having to double check things, to reflect, to search within, and not jump to conclusions. So maybe that's the way that the Mercury retrograde is threading its way into our experiences over the next 6 months. Mercury square Neptune. So Neptune kind of throws a little bit of an interesting flavor onto things. In fact, the solar eclipse is square Neptune. When you have a square to Neptune, there's this interesting dynamic. It's like we all think we know what we want, and we're so focused on that option, that choice. Yeah, that's going to be the thing that does it all. But then Neptune's like, oh, really? Really? Neptune reminds us that we're not in control. And I know that I say the astrology is 50%, you are the 50%. And yes, that is true. I mean, maybe who knows if it's exactly 50%. But Neptune says that there are things outside of our control. There are things that are bigger than us as humans. And sometimes we need to have faith, have trust, and open up to something that is greater than us. And maybe that thing that you're focused on and you think it is the thing, maybe there's something else that you don't even see. And that is a better option. And maybe when you realize that, there's a grief, there's a sadness, there's a confusion. But how can that be the thing? How is that better? Trust, examine, reflect. Excuse me. So this is one of these kind of bigger energies that's threaded in the upcoming solar eclipse. Neptune also is a very spiritual influence. It dissolves or brings us through that boundary, that very thin boundary between the physical world and the non-physical world. And if you don't do it right, it can get a lot of distortion. That's when, you think, oh yes, this is, I feel inside me that this is the truth. And maybe it is, but sometimes our anxiety is in the way. Sometimes our fear is a filter. Sometimes our past prevents us from truly seeing what is the best option. So this is where we have to do our work. We have to reflect. We have to meditate. We have to get back into ourselves. And so we can really see all of the options over the next 6 months. Neptune sometimes can bring up a lot of emotions. So there's a sense that one chapter is ending and another chapter is beginning, and maybe that brings a lot of complicated emotions. And I think that with Neptune, a couple other points, we can't fight against Neptune. There's a sense of surrender, having to go with the flow. The other thing is that my mind went blank. That's a very Neptune thing, my mind going blank. We have to, I know what I was going to say. I have Mercury conjunct Neptune, by the way, exactly. Neptune also reminds us that we have to nourish ourselves on a very deep level. And you see this when people, they keep trying to go after what they think is the right thing because that's how they've been conditioned. That's what their partner wants. That's what their family wants. That's what society wants. but it's empty. It doesn't feed them. So there's something where maybe for some of you, you have to see how do you get fed? How do new perspectives and new ideas, wisdom and knowledge actually nourish you and nourish you deeply over the next 6 months, as opposed to the thing you thought was going to be the thing, the meal, whatever it is. Switching gears. Now we're going to go into Mars in Leo on June 11th. So Mars spends about 5-6 weeks in each of the signs. It's been in Cancer since the end of April. It's a little bit of a emotional place for Cancer to be, or for Mars to be. But Mars, it had that really intense opposition. Did you all feel it? I felt it, maybe because I'm a Scorpio, but that opposition to Mars that we had, I think it was Saturday, just a few days ago, actually, on an Aries moon, no less. It just felt like a really hot weekend. Everybody was fussy and angry, and of course we've got eclipse season coming up. But anyway, so Mars is going to get out of Cancer. It's going to go into Leo on June 11th. But then it's going to activate this other thing that's happening in the sky. And this is something that I've been periodically talking about, something called Saturn square Uranus. Saturn, when it went into Aquarius on December 17th of 2020, began to make a square to Uranus, because Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018, 2019. So how I've been explaining this to everybody is there is a tension in this energy. It is as if you have one foot in a new life in 2021 and you have one foot in an old life. And there are points throughout 2021, this week, next week is one of them, where you really feel that pull. You know that maybe this is a good direction to go, it's a new life, but there's the other part of you that's holding on to the old life because it's comfortable. Maybe it's so comfortable that it's uncomfortable, but you're still holding on to it. So you might see that once Mars goes into Leo, because Leo's a fixed sign, Taurus is a fixed sign, Aquarius is a fixed sign. If you're a Scorpio, God help you, because you're going to make what's called a fixed cross. Sorry, I'm just being silly, but it's Gemini season. We can be silly, right? So this energy is going to really push and pull at things as we get into the end of the month. I think there's Mars opposite Saturn on July 1st. So we're really going to feel, for some people, they're going to see a lot of big, powerful new beginnings in June and July, especially if you are a fixed sign. Because the joke that I've been making lately is that the fixed signs are not so fixed at the moment. What's fixed energy supposed to do? Fixed energy is supposed to keep things fixed, meaning it's stable, it's secure, life can flourish because you don't have to worry about things sliding all over the place. Right now, with Saturn square Uranus, the fixed signs are not so fixed. Allergy season's here in New York City. Anyway, so let's look at what this means for each of the 12 signs. Aries. So we're going to go back to the Gemini solar eclipse. And for you, Aries, Gemini is your sign of communication, writing, information, ideas. So this sounds very much like everything that I was talking about before when I was talking about the eclipse on a general level. It applies to you as well, Aries, because you are what are called the fixed, sorry, not fixed, I fixed in the brain. You are the first sign of the zodiac. So over the next 6 months, you have to really focus on your mind. Maybe you're taking classes, Aries. Maybe you're going back to school. Maybe you need to sharpen your skills. Maybe you need to write a book. This is a great time to start a manuscript, to make an initiative to do more public speaking. But this might be a very busy 6-month period for you, Aries. There might be a lot of travel and trips and errands and movement and back and forth and going out of town. So this is, by the way, and this is for everybody, this eclipse repeats the degree of the eclipse from December of 2011. So I just kind of put that out there in case you go back and think to December of 2011 in your life. So yes, this is a lot of busy movement, and in full Gemini fashion. you have to make some big choices, because at the core of Gemini is to gather different ideas, different perspectives, and then, that duality of Gemini. And when, maybe when you get to the end of this eclipse season, you have to make a choice. Is it a left or a right? Is it an up or a down? Is it a yes or a no? But there is that busy movement over the next 6 months, next however many weeks, where you are gathering new ideas and new perspectives. Now, for you, Aries, that square that I mentioned with Neptune, it's in what's called your 12th sign. So you really need to listen to yourself. You need to absolutely okay, I can't tell you what to do, Aries, not that I would, but it is advisable to meditate, to really get in touch with your inner voice, because if you're making a lot of choices on just raw instinct, which you are more apt to do as an Aries, you might miss something. And I'm just saying this because Neptune's in your blind spot. Neptune's in a very spiritual place in your life, and I think that's a really good way to work with this energy, is to get in touch with yourself, pay attention to your dreams, get that intuitive voice a lot more tapped into over the next 6 months. Taurus. So this eclipse is happening in one of your money signs. Taurus, you are a sign of property and ownership and goods and things and stuff. And this eclipse is saying, hey, let's have more stuff. So maybe you are buying things, maybe you are making a major purchase. That lunar eclipse that we had on May 26th also puts a spotlight on your other finance sign of Sagittarius, so that includes mortgages and loans and benefits and estates, and here you are on the other side of this duality, and you're having to sort of gather things up and do what you do as a Taurus, which is like make sure you have lots of options and maybe even some snacks too. So this eclipse is also drawing upon a square to that Neptune. Neptune is in the part of your chart that can talk about a few things. One, it's your social circle, it's friends, it's community. There's this need to really make sure that you have friends in your life, that you have a really deep connection that nourish your soul. But we also could look at it from the perspective that you need to make sure that the things that you are purchasing and gathering and buying and selling and all the things that you do, Taurus, are really in alignment with the future that is your best future. So just weigh your options, double check everything. If you are making a major purchase at this time, just do your due diligence. I'm not a Mercury retrograde freaker-outer, maybe there's a better way to put that, but I still think we have to double check everything. We did Taurus, we did Gemini, my goodness. So Gemini, happy birthday. If your birthday is June 10th, plus or minus a couple of days, it is a powerful coming year. The conventional wisdom is that if you have a solar eclipse on your birthday, the more exact, the more powerful. The next year, it's a major turn. When you look back, you're like, oh, wow, my life changed, the story changed. And maybe go back and look at that eclipse from 2011 that I mentioned. This would have been December 2011, as a marker, not as some sort of like, oh, the same thing's gonna happen again. But just so you have a sense of like what thematically may show up or on a parallel level. So this eclipse says it's time for a new beginning, Gemini. Also, to go back in time, this is the first solar eclipse we've had in Gemini since 2012. So this is a different part of your life. It's a time to set off in new directions. It's a time to take the initiative, be a leader. But there is that sense of like with Neptune at the top of your chart in your career sign, you have to double check that the directions and the initiatives and that you're going in are in the right direction. Little bonus puppy sounds. So Neptune, just side note, has been in your career sign for 12 years. No, not almost 10 years actually. Yeah, Neptune went into Pisces in 2012. So you're in this larger arc of time where you need to make sure your professional life, your direction, the bigger picture in your life is actually feeding your soul. So just have that in the back of your mind, Gemini, as you set off on these new directions, as you think about what sort of new beginnings you want in your life. But this is a major turning point for you. Your planet, Mercury, is retrograde. It's not the end of the world. Like I said, it's just the time to think or feel first before you act first. So just check in with your intuition, listen to yourself, so that whatever direction you do go in the next 6 months is the one that really connects to your heart. Cancer. So Cancer, this is happening in what's called your 12th sign. So the 12th sign is the last sign of your personal zodiac house, calendar, whatever analogy you want to use. So when you get to that part of the chart, it's about endings. You've come to the end of something. It's time to let something go. I know that these words might not be the words you want to hear, but there's just a reminder, and this is what astrology talks about, the cycle of life, and that things that as they begin, and they are beginning right now for Gemini, in a way they are ending for Cancer. So be present with the emotions that are coming up, the things from the past that are presenting themselves, the dreams you're having, the feelings that you're having. And with Mercury square Neptune, and Neptune is in the part of the chart for you that does talk about what do you believe in, what is your truth, what is your faith. This is a time to search your soul. And that's not a negative thing. This is a time for you to really reconnect with something that maybe you haven't had a chance to reconnect with. Your inner faith, your inner wisdom, your inner truth. And this is something you can use meditation or reflection or prayer or retreat in order for you to connect to these things. But it is typically the next 6 months or time of shedding the past, and this can come, of course, in a lot of different forms. But Cancer, I will say that, and this is something, just a little adding some information, that outside of this eclipse, you have Saturn. I talked about this last week. You have Saturn in your 8th house, what I call your 8th room. So this is in time a little bit more of an emotional time than most of the other signs are experiencing. And this is all about you getting out of your way emotionally so you can open up to something very new in your life. Leo, yeah, Mars is going to go into your sign at the end of this week. So when Mars goes into your sign, you heat up. It's about you taking action, you moving forward. But that said, this is about the solar eclipse, and that solar eclipse is in your 11th sign. So this is an eclipse that's talking about your social circle, your friendships, your community. Like, where do you belong? Who are your people? So because this is a new beginning, new social circles might be coming in, new friends might be coming in. This might, again, thread back to experiences at the end of 2011, 2012, but of course in a very different way. I think then it was a little bit more about endings than new beginnings. But this is also a time for you to start thinking about the future. Where do you want to go, Leo? Like, what are your hopes and your dreams and your wishes for the future? But Leo, and just like I was saying for when I was talking about the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, you're at a crossroads, Leo. I know that this eclipse is happening and it's kind of helping you to vision a very different future, but there's Neptune is over in what's called your 8th sign, your 8th room. So this is also a time for you to do some shadow work, to let go of some old emotions, to maybe even feel your feels. But at the same time, like I alluded to with that Saturn Uranus square, Leo, a lot of big things are happening right now, Leo. You are sort of shifting in a new direction in your life. So really be present with what's coming up and sit with what you're feeling, and make sure you have friends around you to be a support right now. Virgo. So this eclipse is happening at the top of your chart. The top of the chart is about your place in the world. It's about the title after your name. It's about your career and your profession. So, conventional eclipse wisdom is that when you have an eclipse here, there is a change in your professional life. Very common way that this happens is you change your jobs. You get a promotion, you leave a job, you start a new job, there's something like some sort of new beginning in your professional life. But it's a big time for you, Virgo. But Mercury is also up there, and I think with Neptune over in your relationship sign, there's something that has to be worked out between having to negotiate and connect with people, and how do you go off in a new direction in your professional life, but do it maybe in a different way with when I say relationship, it doesn't have to mean intimate partnership, because the relationship sign is all relationships. Like, you're having to really navigate something with a partner right now. It could be any type of partnership, including our intimate partners. So, but this, like I said, there's probably a lot going on in your professional life. If you are in need of new work, make this eclipse work for you, and put yourself out there, because you got some lights on you at the moment. Libra. So this eclipse is in what's called your ninth sign. The ninth sign points you out into the world. It helps you to make sense of things. This making sense of things could be through travel, hopping on a plane. It could be going to college or university. It could be reading a book and really studying and becoming a scholar. But this is, how do you make sense of everything right now? Maybe you do have to go back to school, and an eclipse in this part of the chart, a very classic thing that happens is there's a change in education, or somebody decides to go back to school, but that area of your life is really focused right now. I know that we're not able to readily move and travel, as it is getting better, so maybe you can, over the next 6 months, you are traveling more. Maybe there's opportunities to kind of get out there and see the world. But I think there's also a little bit of the part of that chart that really does talk about view and opinion, and how do you see things, and what really helps you to understand the world. So I think that this is a time where it's really about your education. It's about movement. It's about seeing things, and I mean seeing in both ways, both literally seeing and also metaphorically seeing things. That lunar eclipse that happened 2 weeks ago put the spotlight on like how you speak, how you learn, how you listen. But this is a time that's really putting a spotlight on education, communication, ideas, information. The square, the Neptune square, you have to really make sure that you're doing the work. Neptune is in the part of the sign that talks about projects and just the craft that we all have to put into things, the detail work. It also talks about health and wellness, so maybe there's a sense of like needing to get very practical about how you take care of yourself. But Neptune is like, pay attention to how you're showing up in your education. If you are going back to school, where are your blind spots? Like, do you need some help? Do you need more practice and work to make sure that you are the best student, for example? Scorpio. So this solar eclipse is happening in what I affectionately call the 8th room, because Gemini is your 8th sign, Virgo. So this is where I always say that Gemini has more in common with Scorpio than we realize, because Gemini is a sign that talks about the duality of life, and that is something that is inherent in Scorpio. So with this solar eclipse, you are looking at the duality of life. You are searching deep within. You are looking at your shadows. You are going into your personal underworld. I know, great. But this is a time when you're doing a lot of transformation work, but it also does talk about power. It talks about money. It talks about finance and wealth, because this room also talks about riches. And I don't mean this to make a prediction like, oh, you're going to become rich, Scorpio. I mean, I hope. But also to say that we get to the 9th room, which is after the 8th room, in astrology, and the ninth room is about wisdom and knowledge. I'm like, well, how do you get wisdom and knowledge? You have to go through the eighth room first. You have to be tested by life. And so the eighth room is where we get tested by life. So this is your time, Scorpio, yay, where you are sort of getting tested by life. It's the next big step up. The idea is that when you get into 2022, it's a very different you. And on top of that, you're having all these big shifts and changes with Saturn square Uranus. And then your planet, Mars, is going into Leo at the end of the week, which is putting the focus on your professional life. So you're probably going to be working hard into July. Just put that on your calendar. But there you go, Scorpio. Oh, here's the thing I want to add. So Neptune is in your fifth sign. So the square to the eclipse is also talking about self-destruction and self-destructive patterns, but also where you need to get more creative and more be in who you really are. And the shadow side is where you deny who you really are and having to face that part of yourself. Sagittarius. So you're in the hot seat right now, Sagittarius. You had a full moon lunar eclipse in your sign back on the 26th of May. And then here we are, solar eclipse in Gemini on June 10th. So this is happening in your relationship sign. This is about other people in your life. You sort of started this new chapter 2 weeks ago, but then now it's really about other people. This duality between the eclipses right now is sort of saying, okay, Sag, South Node is in Sag. It's not necessarily about what you want right now. How do you make space for other people? How do you let people in? How do you negotiate? How do you connect? How do you ask for help? And maybe this kind of friendly reminder that astrology teaches us that we can't do things alone. We see this, I'll get on a nerdy tangent, I'll save you all, but astrology teaches us that we can't do things alone, that life flows when we have partnership and we have help from other people. So you are entering a period of your life, the next 6 months, where it is about relationships. So a very classic example is that a new relationship comes in. Doesn't have to necessarily be a romantic relationship, but that's certainly one of the times in which it can happen. The other thing is that new people in general come in, the people that are going to help you negotiate and to connect and to bring help and aid to your life. You have Neptune at the bottom of your chart, which sort of bringing up all these emotions and like, am I safe? Am I safe to connect? Where is home? Who are my people? And maybe you are in fact moving or there's changes in your living environment, but if somebody does come into your life, I know Mercury is retrograde, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a sense of like, maybe the traditional way of looking at that is that if a partner comes in or if a new relationship comes in, it's something from the past, it's something to wrap up. But there also, I think there is, if somebody does come in, there's a need to surrender, and maybe this is where you have to get out of your way, for example. Capricorn. So this solar eclipse is in your sixth sign. So the sixth sign is about work and projects and sort of the minutia of day-to-day life that we all have to do as human beings. So this sort of says like it's time to get practical. It's time to get real. It's time to focus on the things that make our days run, our schedules, organization, but also our health and wellness. So you could use this solar eclipse to make some positive changes in how you take care of your body, what you eat, and even make lasting and positive changes in how you organize your day. The square to Neptune is talking about the illusion of choice. And I think that there is choice, but I always think of, and I don't do tarot like other people do tarot, but I always think of the Seven of Cups, where it's like we have all these options. It's like, well, which one's the right option? So I think that for Capricorn, you have to get really grounded. You have to get really in your day-to-day life, but you've got this myriad of opportunities or options, and it's like, which one do you pick? It's also a time when you have to get really in connection with what you need on an intuitive level, and maybe bringing in that aspect into your day-to-day life. Neptune certainly loves ritual, it loves spirituality, but this is a big time for you, Capricorn, because your planet, Saturn, is in this square to Uranus. So 2021 is asking you to be you and to be nobody else. So maybe this solar eclipse is helping to facilitate that. Aquarius. So Aquarius, Gemini is your fifth sign. The fifth sign is about self-expression. It's about being you. It's about really getting in touch with the passion and the joy of life and what makes you you. It's also the part of the chart that talks about children and being, our getting in touch with our own inner child, but that playfulness that we all need. So this new moon is opening up this chapter where it's like, okay, what sort of creative endeavors? How do you refocus on you? How do you express yourself, personality, identity? And then you have the square of Neptune over in your second sign. So maybe you're questioning, am I of value? Are my creativity of value? Are my talents of value? Is it worthy of something? Or maybe, having to charge people, and that's really scary to have to charge people for something that you create. And maybe it's like, don't undercut or undersell yourself for the things that are really important. But the next 6 months are really about you getting back in touch with you. I will also add that this part of the chart, again, does talk about children. If this is something that's relevant to your life, maybe it's time to welcome new children into your life, new family, but there you go. But like I said, with Capricorn, Aquarius, you too are in this time over the 6 months into the end of the year, and actually the beginning of the year, next year, where you are changing. Like your whole life is changing right now. And you might see once Mars goes into Leo, which is your relationship sign, that big things are shifting and changing as you go into July. Pisces, a patient puppy. Pisces, last but not least, so this eclipse, it's not like, what was I going to say? This eclipse is it's making what's called a cross to you. So you're at a crossroads. You're sort of turning the wheel, and this eclipse is in what's called your home sign, your fourth sign. It's where you live. It's the people that live with you. So people are either moving in, they're moving out. There's a move. There's a change in the household, a change in the home. So very classic astrology is that you are moving. And maybe with the Neptune involved, there's some emotions, there's some feelings, and maybe if you're moving, it's the end of something, the end of an era, and maybe it's you're having to let go and prepare for something very new. But this is a powerful new beginning. This can herald the creating a family, settling down, focusing on family, and also tending to your roots, because this forms the foundation of your chart. And it's the reminder that whatever you do put into these roots, or whomever you live with, or whomever you build a home or a life with, they have to truly support you, and they have to nourish you, and they have to nourish you on a very deep level, because you are in a time, Pisces, where this is a much larger archetype, about 10 years, where you've just been getting steadily more sensitive. So this is a time also for you to open up to your intuition. Mercury is square Neptune. Really meditate, reflect, listen to yourself, be gentle to yourself. The roots of the chart is where we need to make sure that we are being mothered or cared for or nurtured. So there you go. That is your look at the 12 signs of the zodiac and what the solar eclipse means for you, with some extra bonus puppy sounds, courtesy of a 9-week-old puppy. One day when he's not going to freak out, I'll show you all him on the live feed. Yeah, there you go. That is your look at the astrology of June 7th through 13th, 2021. My name is Katie Sweetman. Thank you all for joining me tonight or watching on the replay. I wish you all a good eclipse, this turning point we're going to have for the year. And eclipses, they are really psychically, emotionally taxing, because it's the moment when the sun is disconnected from us. So really make sure you're taking care of yourself this week, and getting what you need. And yeah, so check out your June horoscopes. They are in the show notes. Side note, I sort of come to this every month, and I do come to the idea that maybe about postponing doing the monthly eclipse, monthly horoscopes. I know you guys are going to really hate me for it, only because it takes a lot of work. But we'll see. That's sort of your fair warning. But also, yeah, check out the links in the show notes. I will see you all next week. You can, of course, check me out at empoweringastrology.com. You can book a consultation with me. I know some of you are my clients here on the live chat. And I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, of course. I'm on Spotify. And I'm on YouTube, so check me out there. But until next week, take care. Bye.